Hey, everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Have you ever found yourself feeling like you always attract the wrong people? And what is the wrong person? The wrong person could be someone who doesn't notice you or know you exist, but you're really into them. It could be someone who's treating you badly, someone who's toxic. It could also be someone who's just not ready to invest in the relationship on the same level that you are. But why does it sometimes feel like everyone we're meeting or matching with is the wrong type of person, like you're a magnet for them? Hello, my friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your coach, Angela Pugh. You and I are going to talk about the secrets to dating and creating amazing romantic relationships. And especially if you're single, this one is for you. These are powerful insights you need to hear as you're trying to pick a good partner. I've been wanting to do this because I've been getting so many questions from your fellow listeners around relationships. And I was like, I've got to dedicate a series of episodes to all things dating and relationships, from navigating single life and trying to find a good partner, dating apps, the phenomenon of always attracting the wrong people, all the way to what do you do when you are growing and evolving and your partner isn't? I want you to know whether you are single, dating, married, divorced, in a situationship, or just hooking up and trying to figure it all out. This is for you because you and I are going to cover all the ins and outs of picking them, dating them, loving them, losing them, and everything in between. Now, I'm 52 and I've never been married. I never wanted to be married. I'm not against marriage. I don't have any problem with marriage. My focus was on other things. So I'm not the person to guide you on the depths of marital struggles and issues and navigating modern marriage. I do work with a lot of couples around communication and conflict resolution because these are two of my favorite topics. And you may not know this about me, but relationships are the other subject I study incessantly. And it makes sense if you think about it. My two biggest struggles in life were addiction and relationships, so that's where I focus my time and energy, just to understand how it all works, how men and women are different, and how to love each other instead of being filled with frustration and resentment. And I've learned a lot over the years, and I've made monumental changes in myself and my own patterns. So, for the famous month of Valentine's Day, we're going to focus on relationships and answering all the questions like what are the biggest mistakes people make in relationships? What happens when you're growing and your partner isn't? How do you meet people in this modern era of dating apps and hookup culture? How do you know if someone's really into you and how do you recognize when they're not? And we're starting with a question that stumped me for many years. Why do I always attract the wrong people? Well, it's not what you think. But I'm so grateful you're here with me today. I love it when we get to spend some quality time together. And I want to start by recognizing you for choosing to listen to something that will help you build a better life and help you feel better, and to let you know you're not alone in this thing. And if you're a new listener with us, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited family. I'm so glad you're here with us. So, if you're dating and you don't know where you stand, you're confused, feeling used, or somewhere in between, we're going to start sorting it all out, starting with this question: why do I always attract the wrong people? We do this in friendships too, not just romantic relationships. We all have patterns in how we create and build relationships of all types. And it's super important that you understand and recognize your habits here so that you can make the necessary changes to create better relationships and friendships with better people with healthy boundaries. If you've had thoughts like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I find a good one? Are there any good ones out there? Why do I always end up with liars and cheaters and people with a ton of emotional baggage? Is everyone freaking crazy? We're definitely going to shed some light on what's really going on. And I'll share some of my personal light bulb moments here too, because I had the same struggles and I made all the mistakes and had to work really hard to get my shit together and grow the F up. I was a very toxic person for a long time. I didn't mean to be. I didn't know I was, right? But once I started growing and healing those wounds, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was super toxic in a lot of ways. So I'm very happy to be different. We're going to start with attraction, how we're drawn to people. Why is it that we are attracted to certain people and what makes them attractive to us? And there are a lot of things at play here: proximity, similarity, physical attractiveness, of course. But I want to focus on familiarity. We like people who seem comfortable to us. So, for example, if you had someone in your family or a group of friends that you grew up with and someone was really funny and you like being around them, you might find yourself attracted to funny people because it's something that you're used to, it's familiar to you. And I want to focus on this one for a moment because the same is true for unhealthy traits. If you grew up with a parent that was an addict or in a chaotic home with general dysfunction, whatever, we all have dysfunction. But if you were around people with anxiety or other mental health struggles, if there was a lot of fighting, divorce, all of these life events create emotional patterns and shape how we interact. They shape how we show emotion or don't show emotion, and our ability to have healthy attachment in relationships. I'll use me as an example. I grew up around some significant narcissism and emotional abuse. People who just don't speak kindly to others, right? Dismissive, insulting, condescending. And all of that made me feel unworthy and not lovable because the people that were supposed to love and protect me didn't. Again, this is all subconscious. I didn't know this was happening until I got really deep in doing work on myself. But then I went out in the world and spent years picking exactly that kind of person: narcissist, emotionally unavailable, unkind, disrespectful, because those are the behaviors I was taught from birth. So that dynamic was very familiar to me. Not fun, not healthy, but familiar. So, this is the first thing I want you to look at in yourself as we continue this conversation. What are the emotional patterns you were taught? What is your attachment style because of those learned behaviors? When you're out in the world feeling unworthy and unlovable, it will be challenging to pick a good partner because you don't feel like you are a good partner or that you are deserving of a good partner. And this leads me right into the next thing, which is boundaries. Boundaries are how you repel the wrong people. Low self-esteem and lack of self-confidence and self-respect, these are the things that tell people they can take advantage of you. I did a whole episode about it. I've actually done a few episodes about this in different ways, but episode 202, What Unhealthy Boundaries Tell Others About You. And I will link that in the show notes if you want to go listen to it after this one. But boundaries act as guidelines that define what is acceptable behavior. When you have low self-esteem and low self-respect, you don't set boundaries to protect yourself because subconsciously you don't feel worthy of protection. And unhealthy people will pick up on this immediately. Again, not necessarily consciously, because everyone else is fighting their own unhealthy behavior patterns and what they learned growing up too. Most of this behavior is subconscious. Now, some people are shitty and they do it on purpose, but most people are just emotionally immature and lack awareness all the way around. And that is the crux of this episode, really. I want you to become aware of exactly who you are, how you are showing up, and what you need to work on. Spending your energy focused on improving yourself instead of pointing the finger at everyone else's drama. Anyone else's drama is really none of your business. Mind your own fucking business. It's nothing you have any control over. And your responsibility is to set the appropriate boundaries to get that drama out of your life. Your focus needs to be on you. Boundaries are what allow you to filter out the people that aren't on the same page. When you're coming from a place of low self-esteem, no self-worth, no self-respect, you'll take whatever someone will give you. This is where I lived most of my adult life. I was so desperate to feel wanted and liked and loved that I would take any little shred of attention anyone was willing to give me. I had very low expectations and very low standards. I had no boundaries. I didn't know about boundaries. I didn't know how to set them. I was just desperate for the attention because it gave me a false sense of being wanted. I let everyone get away with everything. And that was the signal to all the unhealthy people that they could get away with anything because I wasn't going to set any boundaries. And that leads me to the next thing, red flags. Oh, we love to ignore red flags, don't we? It's easy to get stuck in this mindset that you always attract the wrong people. But the truth is you pick them. And the way you pick them is by seeing the red flags and ignoring them, not setting the proper boundaries to protect yourself, and letting the person get away with whatever behavior you aren't comfortable with. These are some common red flags, and we're going to talk about why they matter. And again, I want your focus to be on your own behavior, not just picking these out in others, but recognize your own dysfunction and bad habits. Because if you really want to have a healthy relationship, that means you have to be a healthy partner also. It's not just about you getting your wish list from somebody else. You have to be another person's wish list too. So get your shit together. Okay, red flags. The first one is TMI, too much information. We all have baggage and trauma, and those heavy issues aren't supposed to be the third wheel in your first or second date, right? Early dates should be light and fun and playful. You're just getting to know each other's basics, seeing how you interact with the world, and building a little bit of comfort with each other. If someone is word vomiting all their trauma and past dating baggage and telling you all the reasons they're fucked up, it's a red flag. It indicates a lack of boundaries. It also indicates a lack of self-regulation or emotion regulation, just understanding that there's a time and place, and a first or second date is not the time and place to unload every piece of baggage you've been carrying around with you for 40 years, right? It's also an indicator of a lack of personal development and healing work, right? Like that's really a person that hasn't done a lot of work on themselves because, again, they're lacking some self-regulation. The next one is trash talking their exes. First of all, if your ex is such a terrible human, it just shows that your picker is broken. You have bad judgment and bad boundaries because you picked a bad person and built a relationship with them. Making someone else look bad does not make you look better. This also shows an inability to take responsibility for their part in the bad relationship. It takes two to tango, baby. It's not one person's fault. It never is. So if somebody is trash talking their exes and putting all the responsibility on them and it was all their fault, that's a very emotionally immature person because that's just not how anything works. It's never one person's fault. Next, love bombing and grand gestures. So love bombing, if you're not familiar with this term, is when someone is just all over you all the time, right? They're texting you, then you go on your social media and they've liked all your posts and commented, and then they're calling and sending flowers or dropping a gift off at your house unexpectedly. They're constantly telling you how great you are and how much they like you. They're just everywhere all the time. That's love bombing. This isn't healthy, by the way. It can feel really good, but it is not healthy. It is unbalanced and not rational. And it's a huge red flag because it will also burn out just as fast as it happened, right? Or grand gestures, vacations, expensive dinners, and exclusive restaurants, anything kind of over the top for no reason. In my experience, I've dealt with both of these things a lot. And grand gestures seem to be an overcompensation. They want to distract you with the grand gestures because they're lacking in other areas that are important. Next one, lying. I know I don't need to go into too much detail here, but even small lies are red flags because it indicates a much bigger issue. Why do you feel like you need to lie? It lacks personal integrity, self-respect. It lacks respect for others. It's very problematic. If you do this, work on it immediately because it's bullshit and it's unacceptable. And unfortunately, it's one of the most common issues people have. Next, not doing what they say. Saying they'll call and not calling, making tentative plans, then not following up to make the plan or cancel the plan, saying they'll be there at 7 and not showing up till 7:30. First of all, if you're still waiting at 7:30, you need to call me and book a session because we've got some real work to do here, okay? But this shows that someone is not dependable and probably selfish. They're not considering you or your feelings or your time. They're only thinking about themselves. Next is substance abuse. Obviously, we know this one all too well. But this creates a lot of unhealthy behaviors, selfishness, lack of dependability, lying, all the worst red flags. If you are still stuck in your addiction, do the world a favor and don't date. It's selfish and mean, and it's kind of predatory, to be honest. You know you aren't on top of your game. So why take hostages and drag other people into your drama? It's just not nice. It's feeding on people to fill your own void, and it's not okay. So stop hurting people and get your shit together, right? We've all got to get our shit together. The next one is victimhood. Like, why does this happen to me? Why do I always attract the worst people? Listen, the truth is you can only be taken advantage of or screwed over if you allow it to happen. Again, the importance of boundaries. If you're dating someone that acts weird or disappears for days at a time, is secretive about their life, or avoids conversations about where your relationship is or about their own behavior, don't move forward with that person, then be pissed off at them for not being different. It's not fair. People show you who they are. If you don't like who they are, it's your responsibility to leave. It's not their responsibility to become a different person to accommodate you. I had a client years ago, and her person was extremely toxic. Dishonest, unfaithful, like all the things that we all fear. And she said to me one day through tears, she's like, I just want him to stop staying out all night, stop lying, just come home and help me take care of our kids. And I said, well, that's great. I love that that's the kind of person you want, but that's not the person you're with. And he showed you exactly who he was from day one. Don't be mad at him for being exactly who he showed you he was. He didn't hide anything. The dude was toxic from jump, right? So if you're dating that person who acts a little shady, don't play the victim when you get hurt. You had all the information, you're an adult, and you made a decision to be involved with that person. If you're sitting across from someone or you are being someone that is stuck in victimhood, you need to get to work quick. We aren't victims of circumstance. We are a product of our choices. Before you caught that person cheating on you, you probably saw 10 red flags leading up to that. And you probably felt pretty confident something was off. Your gut was telling you something's not right here. You may have even tried to talk to them about it and got blown off or dismissed or lied to. All red flags, by the way. But you knew something wasn't right. You were uncomfortable. You weren't trusting the situation and a million other things. Maybe they were mysteriously unavailable one night and not responding to text or answering calls, and you got the excuse that their phone died. Or maybe all of a sudden they're taking their phone with them to the bathroom when they used to leave it sitting on the table. There are all kinds of little indicators that something is off. And your gut, your instinct always tells you. That's your cue to leave, especially if they can't have a simple conversation about it or they lack the ability to hear your concerns and listen. You see what I'm saying? We aren't victims. We make choices to see the flags or ignore the flags, and that leads to other choices. And when we're unhealthy, we're making all the wrong choices for all the wrong reasons. So those are just a few red flags that are common and damaging, but give you some major insight as to where someone is in their life or where you are in your life and your growth. How much work have they done on themselves? Are they self-aware? Can they communicate effectively? Even on the most basic level. And you need to question yourself on these things too. Are you self-aware? Can you see your maladaptive behaviors? Can you see your own flaws? Are you working on them? Can you take feedback even if you don't like it? Can you communicate about it? Can you apologize for it? Right? Those are emotional maturity things. That's where we all need to be working. What happens is we go into these situations and we're lonely, or we want to have sex, or we want some attention. So we kind of use people to fill those voids, even when we know they're probably not the right fit, but they fit in that moment to fill that void, whatever we're trying to fill. Then when the person doesn't do what you want them to do, you get mad and resentful. And if you work on that mad and resentful long enough, then you're going to get mad and resentful at the whole gender that you date. Emotional maturity is what allows you to see that men aren't bad and women aren't bad. We're all human beings being abused by life on a daily basis and doing our very best to survive and find some happiness. Men and women are different. We approach life differently. We are motivated by different instincts. And being unhealthy, a liar, a cheater, those things are not specific to having a penis or specific to having a vagina. People are wounded, and the vast majority aren't doing anything to heal the wounds. Your job is to recognize what doesn't work for you, set the boundaries, make sure you are healthy yourself, and be willing to walk away from people that aren't what you want in your life. If you're angry at a whole gender, then that's where you need to start your work, because no woman wants to sit across the table from someone who has no respect for women, and no man wants to sit across the table from someone who has no respect for men. We all have to get our shit together. Ultimately, you don't always attract the wrong people, you pick them. You have to engage in conversation, exchange numbers, exchange messages or texts or phone calls. You have to schedule a date. You have to show up. You have to ignore the red flags, sell yourself out. You play an active role in every part of creating an unhealthy relationship. I can attract all kinds of people. I don't have to create relationships with them. If you're consistently pulling these people, then something about them is within your comfort zone and familiarity, and you'll need to work to change that pattern. When you have weak boundaries, people can feel it and they will overstep them. It's like a thief casing houses. They look for houses with the least security, ones that leave windows unlocked, ones off the main road, obscured by trees with no security cameras. If you want to start deflecting these people, get stronger boundaries. And the moment you recognize some significant red flags that don't work for you, you have to be willing to let them go. You are the common denominator here in all your failed relationships, and that means you need to work on you instead of constantly focusing on what's wrong with everyone else. Everyone attracts the wrong people. What matters is how you filter them out. If that little voice in your head is telling you something is wrong, don't ignore it. Pay attention to your feelings. Remember that you don't want to be around someone that makes you anxious and uncomfortable, like you're walking on eggshells. That's not good. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. It's what will protect you from the relationships you don't want. And make sure you are being a good, healthy person also who is respecting other people's boundaries. You can't expect everybody to come to the table and be fucking outstanding if you're a disaster. Like, that's not fair, right? And that's where my relationship rock bottom happened. I was 4 years sober and I made a list of all the qualities I wanted in my dream dude. And when I went down that list, I was not a single fucking one of those things. It was one of the most humbling moments, but my focus shifted to become that list instead of just expecting it from someone else. Wow, this episode was packed with a lot of insights. You know more about me than you probably ever wanted to, but I hope you got a lot of good information here and you really understand how this stuff works and the role that we play and how much power you have. You know, it might feel like I'm being hard on you, always telling you, focus on yourself. You have to be better, get your shit together. But the truth is, that's your power. Right? If you're playing the victim, you're giving all your power away. Like, your power is like everybody else, everything else has the power over you. That feels like shit. I want you to understand you have all the power to manage yourself and maneuver yourself and have whatever you want and be whoever you want. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.